Painkiller Ghosts, Chapter 30, Hyposomniac Dreams, Part 2 of 2. Time is awake at odd hours, with no drugs, no uppers, no downers, no smokes. Sometimes his brain and his body are on different wavelengths. He sometimes thinks he's awake all night, only to be dreaming that he's awake. He thinks he's up all night, and then he suddenly wakes up, sweaty, from a dream that had become a nightmare. He stares at the television, the smashed one, and he tries to will it to work, but it just sits there, smashed. And he sits there, envious of the screen for being smashed. He's on the sofa, doing nothing but wasting time. It's dark outside. He closes his eyes just for a second, a minute, then two, and then he's dreaming. He's dreaming he's back in the graveyard, the cemetery that Mama is buried in, and he's walking around disoriented, and he wanders and wanders seemingly for hours, but the sun never seems to change overhead and the clouds don't move. Then he's there, looking down at Mama's grave, at her headstone, and there's a penny on top, and he looks at it. Then he picks it up and puts it in his pocket. And then he hears laughter, a child's laughter. And across the cemetery he can see a young girl hugging a man, maybe her father. They're looking at a piece of paper that they are holding up between them. And then time wakes up. He's back on the sofa, his hands in his pocket, his beard growing, and his television still busted. He wakes, and when he scratches his nose, his fingers smell like pennies. It's 6 a.m. It's time to take a walk. This is 15 minutes later. Time's gotten up off the sofa and found some warm clothes, a scarf, his hat, the same pair of pants, and his sockless, smelly tennis shoes. He walks out the front door with his camera bouncing around his neck, and he starts walking to the cemetery. He's walking faster than normal. It's colder. Within 15 or 20 minutes, he's walking around the headstones, his camera bumping against his chest as he keeps his hands in his pocket for warmth. It's almost there. It's getting lighter. Time still sees the moon in the distance, as if slacking to see the sunrise. He stands in front of Suzanne's grave for a minute, silently. He doesn't cry. He takes a picture of her grave, of the headstone, of the outline of the new dirt. Then he reaches into his pocket, takes out a penny. He smells it. He puts it on top of his mother's headstone, and then, closer than before, he takes a picture of the penny resting on top of the headstone. He realizes he is stepping on his mother's grave, so he quickly backs up 3 steps and starts walking away, back towards the road. As he's walking away from Mama's grave, he sees a woman, also dressed for the cold, walking in his direction. He lifts up his camera and takes her picture. She stops for a second, then continues walking right towards time. He can see her breath in the air. She walks closer without making eye contact and without saying anything, and then she's right in front of him. She doesn't say anything to him, and he doesn't say anything to her. She smiles and looks down at her hand, then opens her palm between them, and Time sees she has a penny in her hand. She walks around him, goes up to Mama's headstone, and places her penny on top of that one the Time had just put there a minute ago. She turns and walks past him, still silent, and she walks back out the way she came in. Time is following slowly behind her. He has to go that way anyway. He doesn't walk too slowly, but she never speeds up. Time is following Chastity, thinking about photography, unemployment, and the smell of cold pennies. It's a couple of hours later now, and this is how it is. The sun is up, it's a little warmer outside, and the streets are full of the morning commuters. With his nostril bleeding, Stan Thimble doesn't care about people going to their jobs, and he doesn't care he doesn't have a job, and he doesn't care to start looking for one. He's doing nothing. Nothing. Well, not right now. He's not doing nothing right now. This is right now, and this is how it is. Stan and his bleeding nostril are in his car, and he just gave a finger to a teenager who cut him off in traffic, and he's listening to loud rock, but he can't sing along because it makes his nose bleed more. He's driving towards Chastity's house. He remembers the address from the hospital forms. He's doing nothing right now but driving to her house. When he gets there, he has no plan. Maybe he'll just drive on by, but he doesn't know. Stan pulls into the driveway. He pulls in behind the blue car in the driveway. He leaves the engine on. You see his lights on the first floor windows. The front door is shut. The upstairs rooms are all dark. The bedrooms, her bedroom, he smiles at the thought of this. They're all dark. He sees that one of the bedroom windows is open a little, that the curtains hang and dance lazily in the fall breeze. The car is still running, wasting gas. He unfastens his seatbelt and opens the door. He gets out of the car slowly. He walks to his left, around the back of the house, and he takes another right turn, and he's walking back to the front of the house, and he hesitates at the front door. He ambles slowly through the grass and sits in his car, closes the door, turns up the radio, listens for a minute or two, backs out of the driveway, fastens his seatbelt as he stopped in the street, then he puts the car in gear and he drives off. Chastity, a little stoned, sat upstairs in the library of her house, slowly smoking a joint as she sat on the floor and stared out the partially open window at Stan sitting in his car in her driveway. She saw him get out and walk around the side of her house and disappear, and she didn't even flinch. That must be the weed, because she didn't even start to sweat when he walked by the front door, which she knew was unlocked. Then she saw him get into his car, taking his time, backing out into the street, pausing there for a minute, and then she watched him put on his seatbelt and drive off. This was a couple hours before that, then, and this is how it was. Time and Chastity had previously only spoken that handful of words around here in the cemetery after Suzanne's burial. Time walked towards his house, which from the cemetery is the same direction as Chastity's, for a while. He walked behind her, not too far, not too close, for 10 minutes. Then came the time for her to turn, so she did, and she looked back over her shoulder and turned a little, and Time, then catching up at the crossroad, held up his hand where he had been shot and said towards her through his beard, "Wasn't the first time I've been shot." She doesn't say anything, so he smiles. He strokes his beard. He stops in the middle of the intersection. No cars are coming. He pulls the neck of his sweatshirt. He can hear some tears in the seams. He stops pulling the neck and he pulls his arm out of the sleeve, then lifts up the sweatshirt and his t-shirt underneath and shows his shoulder. He nods to the scar and says, "I've been shot worse. It's okay." He continues to smile. She begins to smile. Then she turns and walks on, and he sticks his arm back into his sleeve and turns and walks home towards his smashed television set. But before he does walk off, he snaps a couple frames of her, walking away from him. This is later that day, that night, and this is how it is. Time is asleep on the sofa, and he is dreaming that his television is working. He is dreaming that the stock market is doing well. He's dreaming he won't have high heating bills this winter. He's dreaming there is no violence in the Middle East today. He's dreaming that the fighting in Africa has stopped. He's dreaming he has a pocket full of painkillers. He's dreaming he's seen his mother as a chef on an infomercial on the television. The same television that he smashed when he laid down the sofa just a little while ago. That was smashed when he laid down the sofa just a little while ago. Chastity is not asleep on her sofa. She's gone to the hardware store and bought new locks for the doors, locks for the window, a hatchet, an axe, and then, from the toy store, a solid wooden baseball bat. She tried to find a way to steal one, but she couldn't. She's a virgin, not an angel. Now it's now, in the early morning darkness, and this is how it is. Everyone's asleep. Everyone's dreaming about Mama Exler on their television screen, and everyone is smiling.